What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Botched Finish Podcast, a special edition of the Botched Finish Podcast that will go up on a week that I'm not here. You may say, "Whoa, where's Kevin? Where is he?" Just remember me. Just remember me forever. But this is a special edition podcast. I'm gonna do a one-on-one with one of the co-hosts, Antman 0208. What's going on, Antman? Do I sound too high?
Oh, much, man.
Should I be more cheer up? Should I be like the podcast where we're just ranting?
No, I like the casual kind of tone that we're going for. It's a one-on-one interview, so you don't have to be like getting hyped for like what happened in the week of wrestling. So it's just one of those one-on-one. Like, just imagine you're like at a coffee shop and just having like a conversation.
Oh, so I need to have like that Starbucks music going on then, right? They're playing like the
Oh
news
yeah,
hits.
yeah. Oh yeah,
I think they still do that. I
all
don't
the
know.
time.
I don't know. I haven't been in
Should have like
Starbucks a
some
long
back.
time.
Should have like some background music going on, like a jazz flute
Yeah,
going on.
snapping our fingers. Oh yeah. But anyways, we're doing this one-on-one. I wanted to talk to Ant-Man. This is something I should have done on the first podcast where everyone talks about each other or talk about each other, talks about themselves and talk about about wrestling and what wrestling did to them. But that didn't really happen. I forgot why. Oh, you know what happened, Ant-Man? I was gonna
What
start
happened?
it, and then I started with Tagato, and I'm like, Tagato, please tell you something about yourselves, something about yourself, and Tagato started, and I was like, you know what? Nobody cares about what you say because it's the, and that's how I started it. I think that's how I said the first podcast. So that went up
You
in
should.
there.
You should have just like ended the recording there and just put that as one of the episodes. We're like, oh, this is a podcast where I sit down with Tagato, and then it's that, and then it's just Finn. It's like 3 minutes long.
I'm gonna do the same thing again to him. Wait, maybe do it too.
It doesn't matter what your name
Yeah,
is.
that's what it was. That's what I did the rock thing. But and then I was gonna do it again during the 10th episode of the podcast, but that we had Money in the Bank happening that day, so we couldn't do it. We had to talk about Money in the Bank, and I forgot what else
That
we
damn
talked
Money
about.
in the Bank.
Yeah, Money in the Bank. Oh, Double or Nothing. I think was that week.
Yeah,
No, no,
yeah.
that was next week. That was the next week. Yeah,
It was a busy first like last few weeks that we had as
yeah,
far as wrestling goes.
pretty busy.
So it's actually kind of died down a little bit.
Yeah, so we don't know what's going on this week on Raw and SmackDown. We're gonna guess it wasn't that great after the
Yeah, no,
past few weeks. But
you'll know for sure because we're not gonna have a weekly podcast episode going on next week. I probably won't even bother watching Raw or SmackDown.
I'll probably be watching Raw. It'll be in my town. I won't go to it though. And SmackDown, I won't be able to watch because I'll be on the plane to
Yeah,
Mexico.
time better well spent.
We'll see. SmackDown usually is the better show, but
Usually.
actually, I'll miss the next Raw because I'll be coming back. But yep, special edition. I'm gonna interview Ant-Man. Um, Man, so many questions I can ask you about wrestling, Ant-Man. So many questions. I'm gonna ask you the one and most important thing. Uh, about when or how old were you when you first started watching wrestling? What was happening during that time?
Oh,
Why did you get into it?
oh man. I would say that's the earliest I can remember. I would say I was about like maybe about 5, 6 years old. That's probably the earliest I can remember. It's about 95.
Damn.
Um, I think the way I got into it, I don't even. It was one of the WrestleManias. I have a bad memory for some odd reason with this match because it was one of my favorite matches of all time, and it was the first one I watched. I don't even. I want to say that it was after it actually taking place live because I remember renting it at a video store with my brother, and because he was like full blown into it more than I was. I just happened to like tag along and just oh hey, what are you watching?
Yeah.
Because there's like a between me and my oldest brother, there's a big age gap, about an 8-year age gap. So it was one of the WrestleManias main event, Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart,
Ooh.
Iron Man match.
Oof.
The moment I watched that match, I was hooked, completely hooked.
Did you knew any of the
Um,
wrestlers, or were you just like you just had or
no,
just going in
no,
blind?
not at that. Yeah, yeah, no, not at that time. I was just completely blind. Had no idea about like what the story was, what was going on. I think at one point I didn't even know who was supposed to be the good guy and the bad guy because you're seeing like Shawn Michaels coming out of the rafters, being all flamboyant,
Yeah.
cocky, and then you just see Bret Hart coming out, who's just like real serious, real like straight toned, like just going in there to just handle business and all that.
This guy wanted
So
to
I'm like
wrestle. That's
thinking,
what he wanted
okay,
to do. Yeah.
yeah, like if this guy's supposed to be the bad guy, how could I really know? Because like he's just looking in there just to take care of business, and while the other guy's just looking in there looking like he's about to have a party. I'm like,
That's Shawn Michaels for you.
yeah. So it was around like '95. Um, I think that WrestleMania took place either around that time or a little bit after because I remember not watching it live. What I know it certainly wasn't live, so I had to have watched it by video. And ever since then, I was hooked. I was watching. That's when I started to figure out that oh, these things are like once a month tapings that I go to the video store and just rent. This thing's actually on TV and it's episodic. Oh, that's pretty cool. And once I figured out there was a thing called Monday Night Raw, I was just hooked on ever since.
Monday Night Raw. Yeah, that's when they first started calling it Monday Night Raw, right? Because
Yeah.
before it wasn't called
Yep.
anything. I don't think.
Yeah. I think at the beginning it was just Raw. I don't because I don't even think their tapings were Mondays.
I don't think they
Or
even.
Raw is War. No, it wasn't even called Raw is War.
No.
Damn, I don't even. I wanted to say it was just called Raw.
I think
I
it
could be
was.
wrong on that.
Yeah. I don't know. They say they started like 30 years ago. So, shoot, who
Yeah,
do we know? I wasn't even alive back then.
that is true. Yeah.
But yeah, watching. Oh, so Shawn Michaels. Yeah. So after that, well, so you just kept getting watching. You kept watching it and watching it and stuff like that. Like anything,
Yeah.
anything else caught your eye when you were
So
watching it? Like,
yeah. As far as like that specific pay per view, um, around that age, I mean, obviously now, like to this day, I've watched the entire thing, but around that time, I don't remember specifically like watching that pay per view thinking that something else caught my eye. It was just specifically that match, and then I started to go down that rabbit hole because I would go back to the video stores and be like, okay, this one was here. I obviously just watched this one. What other ones do they have? There was the WrestleMania. It was either previous or 2 years prior, where it was Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I saw
mm,
that one. I was like, okay, I want to rent that video. I want to watch that one. Watch the whole entire thing. Then I started to figure out who Stone Cold Steve Austin was. So, like, obviously, right off the bat, my first three wrestlers that were introduced to me were Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Then I started to figure out two of them were from the state of Texas. Michaels and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold, little fun fact for you guys. My mother is from the same place that Stone Cold Steve Austin was born, Victoria, Texas.
I think you're gonna say
Off the
I think you're gonna say your mother was
my, yeah,
related to Stone
my
Cold.
mother used to date Stone Cold
Oh,
Steve
that
Austin in high
too.
school.
I was like, holy moly.
That would have been amazing. No, and like even to this day, I tell my mother that too. I'm like, hey, you're from the same place, Stone Cold. She's like, oh, you know what the hell that is. Uh, but this is neither here or there. So yeah, that was like the first like times that I was getting into wrestling was just not watching it live, was just spontaneously just going to the video store with my brother, watching him rent out these old WrestleManias, and then falling down that rabbit hole of like, okay, well, I'm gonna watch every one of these videos that this video store owns. So I was watching WrestleMania 10, 9, 8, 7, back to
Damn.
the point where it was the debut of The Undertaker.
Damn.
or Undertaker's first. Then I started to figure out like, okay, there's other events other than WrestleMania. There's Survivor Series ones. There's SummerSlam
SummerSlam,
ones.
yeah.
There's Royal Rumbles. So like I didn't even know what a Royal Rumble was. I was like, okay, that just sounds interesting. I went all the way back to the Royal Rumble that Ric Flair won. I think it was his first official match in WWE, and he ended up entering that Royal Rumble at number one. Ended up winning the world title,
Okay.
and cut that one promo, the tear in the eye promo. Like I was hooked on that. But I mean, by the time I started watching that, Ric Flair was kind of like kind of fading out of that, being one of the best wrestlers. So obviously, I kind of missed that window of watching Rick in his heyday. But watching all these other superstars in the primes like Stone Cold, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, uh, Big Daddy Cool, Kevin Nash, Sid Vicious, the Undertaker in his prime, uh, prior to the Attitude Era. So I just started renting videos just left and right.
This is way all before I was born too. When you mentioned these people, I wasn't even born yet. I was born in '94, so you pretty much started watching right when I was born.
Oh yeah. I was born in '90, early '90s. So by the time it was around '94, '95 was when uh, I'm hanging around with my brother a lot because I grew up in a single parent household. So a lot of the times, my mother wasn't really around because she was working a lot. So I was always around my siblings. So whatever my siblings wanted to do, because I was the youngest, I was basically doing it with them. So if my brother wanted to go to the video store to go rent stuff, I had to go with them. If my sisters wanted to go and do this, I had to go with them. So it wasn't even a thing that just out of my own curiosity or out of my own interest I wanted to do. It was just somebody else's that I just happened to find interesting.
That's interesting. Interesting. So did you like? Was your mom against any of the wrestling stuff when she saw it, or? I mean, I guess it was before the Attitude Era, before it got really crazy. So.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to her, because they still at the time were doing like the Saturday. This it was like Saturday Night Live, or
Yeah.
not Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
It was like Saturday Night Main Event.
Yeah.
They were still doing that at the time, and then of course you had the pay-per-views on the Sundays. So money wise, she did not want to spend a dime on those. So if there was any shows that were nearby, any of the pay-per-views that were going to be live on cable, there was no way in hell she was spending money on that. But at the same time, like when I would watch the weekly shows or if I was renting the videos from the video store, to her it was basically another form of like entertainment that me as a kid was watching. So like she knew that I'd like to watch Saturday morning cartoons, watch animes. So every time I went there and I was watching wrestling, she thought it was just like another version of that. Which to this day, I'll argue with people all day that it's basically wrestling is a different version of an art form. It's basically no different than somebody watching an anime or somebody watching
A cartoon.
a cartoon or reading a comic. It's like wrestling is no different than that. It's just a different style. So my brother kind of saw that at an early age. Like, I think she thought it was a little bit more gratuitous when it got to the Attitude Era stage, but she wasn't interested in it to begin with. So most of like that hardcore stuff that they were kind of diving into in the late '90s, she wasn't really paying attention to it. So like the stuff that I was watching as a kid, probably shouldn't have been watching, but at the same time, she didn't really notice. So
So you never did like, you guys did your own, you like wrestle each other, like try to like imitate the people on the pay-per-views,
oh,
TV, stuff like that.
oh,
Because I did that a lot when I
oh
was a kid.
God,
So.
yeah, oh God, yes, all the freaking time, yes. So yeah, like once I started to like go down that rabbit hole, of being like, oh, this is what wrestling is, and wrestling seems cool to me. Then I started noticing like everybody that I knew around me that was around my age either was like a closet wrestling fan or knew about it but didn't know that anybody else knew about it. So like once I would bring it up to people, they'd be like, "No, no way, you watch that too?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh hell yeah!" So next thing you know, I have like this whole group of friends that I was already friends with. We just happened to all figure out that we like wrestling, and then I have like cousins that were around my same age. They all knew what wrestling was too. So of course, when there were nights where uh, somebody's parents weren't there, or somebody's got like a big backyard or a big room. Everybody just went straight over to their house, and we're just having hardcore matches. We're having trampoline matches. We're doing
Oh,
like all kinds
perfect.
of like little stunts and everything. Yeah, I think one time I went to my cousin's, and it was me, him, another cousin of mine, and a friend of mine that lived down the street. His mom went out. We were already at a good enough age where we could all just take care of ourselves. So we're having a fatal four-way with quotations ladder match, and we put like the little. It wasn't even an actual like legit literal like legit belt. It was a literal belt. Like we just
Uh,
grabbed like
like,
his stepdad's biggest belt buckle that we could find, put it on the belt, and put it over the uh, the ceiling fan. So we had the ceiling fan turned off. We just got up top, put the little belt over it, and then we started the
you
match.
should turn that on.
So
Imagine
I
how crazy it
have.
was if it was
Oh
on.
man,
Yeah, I can't get
I think
it.
that
Damn.
we would have really hurt ourselves even more. So so what happened was, so we're not using a legit ladder. We're using a stool.
That's a
Uh,
ladder. That's just like a small
so
ladder.
yeah, I mean, it's got like the little bitty steps. We're not like making like these big steps. It's just one little step that we're just doing. So I lay so I remember at the time too. I'm watching ECW, and my friends and my cousin they're all on WWE the whole time. So I'm watching WWE, I'm watching WCW, I'm watching ECW. My favorite wrestler out of ECW was Rob Van Dam.
Mm.
So, doing like, especially when we're doing like these gimmick matches, like ladder matches, I put my cousin on the stool, I lay him down there, I go up to the highest part of the couch, and I'm about to do the 5-star frog splash. So normally, and most of these guys knew that that was my favorite wrestler, so that was the one thing I always wanted to do was the five-star frog splash. So they always knew, okay, if I'm up in the air and I'm gonna do it, I'm either gonna like put my arms down to where I'm not gonna hit you that bad, or I'm gonna like kind of put my knees there to where my knees hit first before I hit you first, or do the obvious thing where put your knees up so I can see, so that way I'm not gonna hit you, I'm gonna hit your knees, or just take it. Just like put your arms up. Like you can even put them across your chest and just kind of take it. I'm not gonna hit you that bad. Well, this this
Oh
guy
god.
just moves out of the way in the middle of my dive. Just moves out of the way completely. So the only thing I'm gonna hit, and it's on a stool, so it's not laying on the ground or anything. Like the stool's just up. So there's my knees aren't gonna hit first. I'm too late for me to put my arms over my chest. I'm straight up gonna hit this stool. So it's the moment I hit it, I have 3 cracked ribs.
Oh.
And
How old were you when this
so
happened?
that yeah, yeah, like 7, 8, somewhere around that
God,
time.
three
Yeah,
crack ribs, dude.
yeah. So yeah, it wasn't the greatest feeling in the
Holy
world.
shit.
Uh, like those kind of things, it was so much. Like even when we were like legit hurting ourselves, it was still fun. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
You're doing like crazy
we
moves that
did
you
that a
saw on
lot.
TV, so actually performing them in real life is pretty cool. Because I used to do that too when I was a kid, and
Yeah, which is hilarious because I think they even dove into it even more when you were watching WWE. They would specifically say, "Do not try this at home."
yeah,
And the first things that we were doing as soon as the show was over was doing it.
yeah. God, crazy, dude. 3 crack ribs. God, what a childhood. I never had that. So like,
It was wild.
did your mom ever get mad when that happened? When you got hurt?
Oh yeah, 100.
And then
Oh
she
yeah,
blamed wrestling for
100%.
it?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of times I was exaggerating on like what caused it. Like she
Mm.
knew that like if we were horse playing, that's what we were doing. Like the horse playing wasn't even considered something of just like, oh, they're just messing around. Like no, if the moment she thought of horse playing, she thought of that we were wrestling. So whenever I would come home with like injuries or something like there's a big wallop on my head or something like that, she knew that's exactly where it came from. So she always wasn't too happy when that would happen. But at the same time she knew like, okay, well, that's just their version. It's no different than me going out to the yard and playing tackle football with my older brother and his friends. Or it's no different than me riding a bike and just tripping and busting my head on the bike. It's no different. You're gonna do it and it's gonna happen. Just try not to make it too serious. That was probably the serious thing that happened was just the three cracked ribs. Other than that, I don't. We were pretty careful with each other when we did do it.
Jesus. I mean, man, you have it pretty easy because when I used to do it, my parents would get mad. Like, they get pretty pissed if I ever did it in the house. That's where we go to the
Oh yeah,
other friend's house and do it there. So that's how we got
yeah,
away with
yeah.
it. Yeah.
You always wanted to go to the spot where if you were gonna get in trouble by the parent, who was gonna be the coolest parent?
Yeah.
Like who was gonna walk in and see four or five kids just hitting each other with steel chairs, and like steel bats and like all kinds of shit? Who's gonna walk in and be like, keep it down, and that's it, instead of like throwing
Yeah.
everybody out?
You wanted that one like dad to be like he sees this when it comes in and he's like and he sees someone get covered getting
Yeah.
pinned and he jumps in there and
Oh yeah.
does a three
Oh
count.
yeah.
That would have been the
Yeah.
best. I was
We
always hoping for that.
Oh yeah, we had that a few times when I would go to my cousin's house. He had an older brother. Um, he was about the same age as my older brother, but he is a huge guy. Like to this day, he's 6'4", over 300 pounds, and back then he was around like 16. He was almost around that same height. He was about 6'2", 6'3", almost at 300 pounds. And this was around the time that the Big Show was big in WCW.
Mm.
So every time like we were doing wrestling or whatever, and he would walk in, we would call him the Big Show. And he was a big wrestling fan too. He was just he always thought that all right, well actually doing it's like too kiddie. It's not for me. Like we don't do that anymore. But when he would walk in, he'd see us, he'd be like, all right, I'm gonna fuck y'all up. So he'd come in and just immediately just start choke slamming everybody, like choke slamming all of us to hell. But like even then, those are fun because we would see him come in and we're just like, oh shit, and like we're just like waiting to see what he would do. And the moment he'd come in, he'd be like, oh, it's a big show, and he'd just start choke slamming everybody. We just go with it because we always thought that was like a cool thing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Just having that one brother just helping out too, just for the hell of it. But man, that's a crazy childhood. But let's get into like you mentioned that you watched it before the Attitude Era. I wanted to know. So I'm guessing you watched it transition to the Attitude Era.
Yes.
Like right. How was that? Like what did you think about it when it went more like hardcore, more like edgy? I guess. In a
Yeah.
way.
Um. Yeah. So it was. It's crazy because I remember vividly the moment that WCW was starting to like WCW was always around. I just saw it as like oh, this show's on. I'm gonna watch it because Raw's on commercial, or WCW is always starting an hour early before Raw. So I'm gonna watch this for a good hour until Raw starts, and then I'm gonna switch over to Raw. I did that for the longest time. Uh, so I started to notice. This was around when Sean got his back injury, and he was going to be on the shelf for a long time. I think he basically retired at that point.
Yeah, I think you pretty much
So
retired.
when that happened, it was that WrestleMania. I saw that happen. They gave the title to Austin. So that's the Austin era was basically the start or going towards the lane of the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
But you could even tell like from 95 all the way to early 2000 WCW was just clicking on all cylinders because even then you started to notice, oh, Kevin Nash is starting to, Scott Hall, they're all starting to go to WCW. I
Mm.
think Hulk Hogan was already there. Brett was already on his way over there after the Montreal Screwjob. I saw Brett transition over there. Sid Vicious was there. I'm already starting to notice a lot of these WWE guys are starting to go there. And these were guys I grew up with. So now I'm starting
Yeah.
to like pay more attention to WCW because I'm like, okay, well WWE has to transfer to a new age of stars like the Rock. They have to start transferring to guys like Stone Cold,
Nice.
Undertaker's still there, but you got to bring in guys like Kane, and you got to bring in those kind of guys. Whereas WCW, I'm like, oh, okay, well they already have Chris Jericho, they already have Eddie Guerrero, they already got Rey Mysterio. I love that. By the way, I love that Latin stable that they had in WCW. I thought it was
Oh,
the greatest thing ever.
the Latino
With
World Order.
Conan, yeah, I love that thing. Um, so like WCW already had my attention. Then they started to get all these WWE guys. So now I'm like, okay, this is even better to watch. Like I'm starting to get more intrigued on the star power that WCW is starting to build. And then I'm starting to notice like how they're trashing WWE and like these little subtle like kind of like
Hmm.
digs at them. WWE's not really responding to it. I never, as a kid, you never really paid attention to like ratings, or you never really like
Yeah.
knew what was going on backstage and all that. But you did start to see a transition on the weekly shows where WWE was just like, once they figured out who their stars were gonna be and who they were gonna be, like, okay, these are good, these are the guys that are gonna save the company because now Sean's out, so we got to build up Triple H. Austin's our main guy now. We got this young guy in The Rock that's eventually going to be a star, but we're going to have to start building him up now. We brought this new guy in that's going to be a counter to The Undertaker.
Yeah.
We're going to have him as his brother.
We're pushing Triple H now.
Like, yeah. So once that started to happen on like who their core guys were going to be, that's when you saw them take that turn. So now, once they started to take that turn, that's when I completely switched. Because while I did see that WCW had most of the guys that I wanted to see because I saw them growing up, they just weren't doing much with them. They had the stars. They just it didn't. It seemed like they were more, because that, and you look at it now, it seemed like they were more intrigued on like who can we take away from WWE that they can't use against us. We
Kind of
could
what.
take away Bret Hart. We could take away Sid. We could take away the Outsiders. We could take away as much talent as we can. And now that we're doing that, okay, what do we do? Because now our roster's starting to get a little clustered. Okay, well, we're gonna start a show called Thunder on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep doing our pay-per-views. We're gonna do this thing every now and then on Saturdays. We're gonna be doing all kinds of stuff, but like it got to the point now where you're just like, okay, you got all these guys, but I'm just not seeing anything that's interesting. Even
sounds
as a kid,
sounds
there's
so
not really.
familiar.
While me, yeah, and meanwhile, I'm watching Triple H running around with the fucking sledgehammer with DX, trying to kill Stone Cold and The Rock, and The
Yeah.
Rock and Austin are fighting each other. And you got this guy that's this random dude named Kurt Angle just showed up out of nowhere, who's like really, really good on the mic and is really, really good wrestler. And I'm starting to see Kane and The Undertaker be brothers of destruction, destroying everybody. Like now, like everybody that WWE was had to start over from the ground up and rebuild are all in really, really good storylines, and is really, really intriguing TV to watch. So you just saw that transition, and it was, even as a kid, like I was about 10 years old at the time, from 8 to 10, you could easily see that transition.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I was saying like, it kind of sounds familiar like what WWE is doing right now with them getting people talent from like the indies and stuff. That way the other people can get it. But then AEW,
Right.
it's kind of turning into like that attitude
Yeah.
era type of style.
Yeah.
So they're pushing all
Yeah.
these new guys.
Yeah. That's why. Yeah. That's why. Like I I kind of like don't do the eye roll thing, but I do have the never say never attitude when people are like, "Well, WWE is a machine. It's never gonna fail. It's always gonna be there. Like you're always gonna be a spoke on the wheel."
Yeah.
Well, that was before there was any competition. Now you got this. I mean, I'm not saying AEW is gonna be the next WWE, but if they're at least a legitimate threat, then this thing's gonna be back to the if you don't learn from your history, you're destined to it's exactly what's happening right now was basically what I saw
Yeah,
back
back then, yeah.
in the late 90s.
Yeah, yeah, you were mentioning that. I remember this is kind of the downhill of WCW because yeah, you were saying that they were getting these top stars, but they weren't doing anything with it. And then when they did storylines, it wasn't that great. Like at the beginning when they had everyone, it was pretty good. They started
Yeah.
with NWO.
Yeah.
And like, oh man, this is great. But
Yeah,
then it started to go downhill
yeah.
after a
You
while.
start you started to notice too, like, who, like, you always knew that Vince was always the main guy who was always the one in control at WWE. Especially once he started to get off of commentary and started to be as an actual character. Whereas in WCW, you had Eric, but you knew Eric wasn't the main guy. Then you had like Vince Russo just fucking like showed up out of nowhere. He's in there. You got all these like every other executive dudes that were characters that were coming out. I was like, okay, who the hell is supposed to be the captain of the ship? Because you got
Yeah.
so many of them that just keep coming out. Then you know damn well that they're all in the back arguing about storylines and characters. So I think there was actually even times where you saw it live. They were actually arguing live. So you can see that like dysfunction of like, okay, there's too many cooks in the kitchen, a la WWE now.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the same stuff going on too. But so that's interesting. Yeah, so that you see the attitude already, rising, WWE rising, and then WCW falling. So what happened? What did you think when just WCW kind of destroyed itself on its own, and then they get bought out by WWE, and you started seeing a little bit of
Yeah,
mix up going on with WWE and WCW
yeah,
after that.
yeah. Like you saw the ship sinking fast. The moment you started to notice that okay, things are going really bad at WCW is when you saw long term WCW guys that you thought were like WCW, like the first thing you saw them, the first thing you thought of with WCW. The moment you saw those guys jumping ship was when you knew there was something wrong. So the moment that Raw is Jericho debut
Mm,
happened, that's when you knew like okay, this is a game changer. Like this is where WWE is gonna take it. Like this is where the rise of this is gonna the empire is gonna start and the competition is gonna fade out. At least to me, it probably would have been, it probably was a lot sooner. There probably was something that happened a little bit sooner than that. But to me, the red flag to me was the Raw is Jericho debut. And because shortly after that, you got the Four Horsemen. You got Dean Malenko coming in. You got Chris Benoit coming
yeah,
in. You
the
got Eddie
Radicals.
Guerrero coming in. Radicals. Uh, you started to get those guys in. Then eventually, you're starting to see in WCW that their star guys that they got from WWE were no longer either wanting to compete or just we're just calling it quits. Like Bret Hart called it quits.
Mm,
Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan, they all started to kind of like fade away. So now you're left with literally Sting. That's literally who you're left with at that point is Sting.
yeah,
So
I guess Booker T
what's
then,
you?
because he's gonna become a main
Yeah,
eventer. Yeah.
yeah. Now they're starting to book Booker T as a main eventer, which I thought was hilarious because you just saw him with Harlem Heat for so long,
Yeah.
and then just out of the blue, and on top of that, they're making him a main event guy and like all these gimmick matches, these random gimmick matches. I was like, what the hell are we even doing? Um, so yeah, like once you saw that, you instantly knew that WCW was just dead in the water at that point because they're like WWE even wasn't they weren't even planning on like okay, now that we're ahead of them, let's take all their stars. They were just grabbing their people that just weren't happy there. Like Jericho was probably their biggest acquisition, and we all knew that Jericho was good. But we were like, all right, mid Carter that you could turn into a main eventer, maybe. But even then, you got to put him in the main event spot. He wasn't like right off the bat a main eventer.
Yeah.
Benoit, same thing. Eddie Guerrero, same thing. They were all like mid Carter guys. So when you brought them in, you're like, all right, I know who they are, but I mean, it's not knocking my socks off. But they brought them in and they turned them into something, and it's basically what WWE was doing now or was with NXT. Like they're bringing in these guys, these indie guys. You're like, okay, I know who this guy is, but I mean, he's not gonna knock my socks off. Then like 3 months later in NXT, you're like, okay, this guy's like one of the best wrestlers in the world. So
Yeah.
that's basically what WWE was doing with their WCW talent. They weren't going after their main eventers. They were just going after guys who just weren't happy there that just happened to want to go there. And they brought them in like, okay, these aren't their main eventers, but we're gonna turn them into main eventers. And that's exactly what they did.
So did you feel like sad that you saw WCW just fade away? Like it was just gone afterwards? or you was just like you didn't
No,
really
not
care too much? You're just like, yeah,
yeah, not
I didn't
yeah,
like it
yeah.
anymore, so
Yeah, as a kid, you're not really understanding the concept of competition or that's my competitor, so I want to take them out and have that ruthless aggression against them. Yeah, as a kid, you didn't really think that. If anything, I was excited because I was like, okay, the two shows that I like really, really used to watch all the time is now going to be merged into one. That's pretty fucking awesome. So now I get to like see all these brand new matches I never got to see before. Like now I get to see Chris Jericho versus The Rock or Chris Jericho versus Stone Cold. Now I get to see Chris Benoit versus Kurt Angle or Eddie
yeah, oh yeah.
Guerrero and because I think Ray. Well, I don't know if Ray was there at the time. He might not.
No, Ray came way later. He like ruthless aggression era type of time he came in. But give me a second to come back from the batteries. Little technical difficulties going on, guys. Don't worry, we'll get you back into it. Let's say, yeah, ruthless aggression would be 2003. Ray came in, if I remember correctly. I wanted to look it up right now. When did when did Rey Mysterio debut in WWE? Give me 1 second. Rey Mysterio. 1 second. 1 second. Oh, 2002. Oh, all right. That's when he came in. Hey man, where are you? Let me know. Let me know. Let me know. There we go.
Okay, I'm
There's
back
that
on.
man. There's that man. You got me worried
I was
that
like, what happened?
the battery's
Sorry, I
dead.
think it might have died. My battery has been tending to randomly die on me, even though it's fully charged.
Mm.
But no matter. Hopefully, I'll notice it next time. But where was I?
I was checking. Oh, I just checked when Red debuted. He debuted in 2002, so kind of close to the Ruthless Aggression era. But yeah,
Oh yeah. But
towards
no, yeah, like no, as a kid, I wasn't really paying attention to the like kind of backstage part of it, where I was like, oh, this company's going down. What's gonna happen to all their employees? What's gonna happen to all their wrestlers? My thought as a kid was just like, oh, I get to see all these new matchups going on, like Jeff Hardy versus Van Dam in a ladder match, or Big Show versus Undertaker. You know, Chris Jericho versus Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho versus The Rock, Chris Benoit versus Kurt Angle. Like all these fucking like marquee matchups I didn't think I was gonna watch. And I was saying that even then you had like ECW just randomly show up with their guys. Like, oh, okay, what? Now I get to watch like Sandman versus or Stone Cold in a drinking contest. Like, how fucking awesome is that? Like, just all these like little marquee things that you didn't think you were ever gonna see. You're gonna see now instead of like you weren't really thinking about you know the adult stuff of what was going to be happening to WCW.
yeah, that was too much. I didn't even think about it when that happened to me. When I was like when WCW was sweeping
Yeah.
away, I was
Now,
like,
yeah, like nowadays it's fascinating. Like if you ever watch like the documentaries of it, like on WWE Network or anything like that, it's fascinating to watch.
yeah,
But as a kid, you just weren't thinking it.
because you didn't understand what's going on. It's just
Yeah,
they're making them both together. Oh, that's cool.
yeah.
That was it. Not much to it when you were a kid, but yeah, simple minds. We had a simple mind back then. But
Oh yeah.
at any point through, like, how long have you been watching wrestling now? How long has it been? Yeah.
Um, let's see. So I started in '95. Um, I want to say from about 11 to 13, I took a break.
Okay,
Um,
that's that's exactly what I was going to talk about. Like, at any
yeah,
point did you like quit watching wrestling just because something happened and you just
yeah,
weren't into it? I'm guessing that's what the break was.
yeah. Yeah, I'm like trying to remember vividly. So I remember like '08, I graduated in '08. and the first thing I did was I was going to be going to college in Dallas. So, at that point, going to college, I have nothing to my name, nothing in my pocket. I'm just taking what's on my back and what's in my bag. Uh, the last thing I'm thinking about is adding bills that I don't necessarily need to have. So stuff like cable, just stuff like a phone bill, like, just basic stuff like that. I'm like, okay, I'm not spending money on that stuff for a while. So about from '08 to like maybe 2010, 2011, I did not watch wrestling. Because I got so used to not having cable or just not paying attention to the outside world too much. I was just focused on my school, my job. And if I'm putting a lot of hours in school, I'm putting double hours into my job to make sure I'm paying for that school. So, uh, yeah, and I did that for so long. So like around 2011 was when I finally moved back to San Antonio. And when I got here, um, I started to watch wrestling again, but like it was kind of bizarre because like I was coming back in, but this is when the PG era was officially off the off the off to the races.
Yeah.
Because in '08 it was starting to transition. It was starting. You could notice they stopped having like blood matches. They stopped having these hardcore gimmicky matches. Uh, so you could see the transition. So when I came into 2011, I was like, okay, John Cena's not cussing at people or doing rap stuff anymore, or he's now like full blown wearing colorful T-shirts and is being very positive. Like he basically might as well be my life coach. uh, like he went from him walking around in chains and wearing brass knuckles in the ring and using brass knuckles to win matches to saying or having like fucking like life lesson prints on his t-shirts. It's just so weird. Uh, so just watching wrestling around that time, like it kind of turned me off a little bit too, and it kind of like took me out of turn. But I was just starting to continue to watch it. I was continuing to watch it because there was just a lot of like new names I didn't know about. There was new names like CM Punk.
Mm.
There was uh, oh man, I'm trying to think. I think it was when there was like they were starting to develop NXT. I don't even think they called it NXT. What they called it, Nexus,
No,
right?
it was NXT, but it was not the NXT we see today. Remember, it was like a game
Right.
show
It was
type
like
of thing.
it was like literally like a developmental system, but they did like have it in like a game show, like Tough Enough kind of thing
Yeah,
going on.
it was weird.
Which I think that was around the time that I saw the Tough Enough episode where the Velveteen Dream was on it. I thought that was great.
Oh, yeah,
Because you
yeah,
watch him now, you're like, why did this guy not win it to begin
yeah.
with?
I forgot who won it.
um, yeah, we haven't seen him since the guy that won it.
Actually,
I don't even think he wrestles. Does he?
I wanted to say it
Not
was.
even like indie.
I wanted to say it was Ryback who won it.
No,
He never won it.
no, he
Was
didn't.
Ryback
He
one of
didn't win
those?
the first one. The first one was. I don't even know who the fuck the guy was. I have no idea who he was because I don't even think he wrestles any. That was the same one. It had Mandy Rose. They had that one girl that used to be in the Funkadactyls, like Naomi's friend, or
Oh
not
yeah,
friend,
yeah,
but like
yeah.
her. They had that girl in there. Velveteen Dream was in there. Oh man, there was somebody else in there that's somewhat kind of a big name, but I can't remember who it was.
You know who won the first one? I think it's the first one. Yeah, you know who won the first one? Maven.
Who? Well, yeah, I remember that one. I remember the Maven one. But that was like the very first one. Then they stopped, and then they did the reboot. The reboot was like back in '11 because I remember coming back into it and then rewatching it again.
Okay,
Because I
well,
think that was the year. That might have been the year, or I might have my years mixed up. But that was the one where Stone Cold was the coach. Then he had assistant coaches like Booker T, Trish Stratus. Like he had those coaches.
I'm trying to find it.
Um,
Man.
But yeah,
Yeah,
look up that winner because yeah, look up that winner and then look up that cast Because you look at the winner and then you look at the cast, you're like, what the hell were they thinking?
Okay.
I mean, that's all in hindsight now, but um,
Let's see. The winner. Is this
this
2011?
is this is good audio.
Good audio, dude. Yeah,
It
we got
might
it.
have
Oh, no, this is 2010. Damn it, this is
been.
2010. Stone Cold was in this one, so that got me confused.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say. What was I gonna say? I don't know what I was gonna say now. So yeah, at that break, you see these new
Yeah.
people. You didn't get turned off with the new people because I remember I had that break similar to you, and I kind of was kind of almost turned off by the new people because I was like, I don't like seeing new people if I didn't see them from the
Yeah.
beginning.
Um,
It was
yeah,
throwing me
it
off.
wasn't. Yeah, so like the new people didn't exactly bother me. I think it was the old people that had new gimmicks that were bothering me. So like I'm watching guys like Edge who had the rated R superstar gimmick and now he's like kind of like a shell PG version of it. Not shell of a wrestler, he was still very
It's
good.
just Edge.
But he's just you take that persona away because you change from a PG-13 to PG. What the hell are you supposed to do with the guy? I mean, other than you giving him a complete reboot, you can't use that character. You can't really. I mean, unless you turn him babyface, which why the hell would you give a guy who's named the rated R superstar babyface persona? Zero sense to me. Then you had guys like Randy Orton. Randy Orton was like the Viper, the Legend Killer. Then they started. Next thing you know, he's got like a billion fucking names. I'm like, oh my god, why has he got so many fucking names? Like, I only know him as the Legend Killer. He's like always doing this random shit to like all these old legends. And then fast forward the clock. Now he's still one of the best wrestlers, but you have to take that away from him, obviously, because now you're PG. You can't be punting people in the head anymore. You can't be doing all that crap. So what do you give a guy whose gimmick is like literally attacking old guys and punting their heads off? What do you give him now? It's just not much. To this day, that's still Randy's problem. Uh,
He's just a Viper.
so
Whatever that
he's
means.
just a viper. So yeah, a lot of it like I was watching guys like CM Punk was my favorite. Like the moment I saw CM Punk in ECW, the reboot, the moment I saw him there, I was like, that guy's gonna be a star. So he was automatically one of my favorites. And I'm trying to think of like who else that was new that I liked. I love the fact that Sean was still there. I was like, oh, good for you. Like you're still going. It was around the time that he was on the verge of retiring, but he was still pushing it. Taker was still there. Um, I'm trying to think of like any like new guys around that time. So, oh man, what was there? Like Wade Barrett was there,
Oh yeah,
maybe.
yeah. Way back, David
Um,
Otunga, Justin Gabriel.
yeah, well, yeah, most of those NXT guys I couldn't stand. I actually thought Wade Barrett was gonna eventually be good.
Never did.
Um,
He never did. At least he didn't push him to be
he got
good.
mid card. I'll
Yeah.
give him that. He got mid card. Um, yeah. So like any of the new guys didn't really bother me. A lot of it was just the old guys having either different gimmicks or they took away their gimmicks, so now they got nothing to go off of. So that was like the only thing that was like somewhat bothering me. So at that point, I was like, well, I think wrestling now isn't gonna be a 2 or 3 hour show where I'm just like entertained the entire time like back in the day. Like back in the day as a kid, I could watch 2 hours of Raw and like my eyes are glued to the TV the entire time. Now I'm starting to realize like going back into watching it, I'm just like, okay, I'll watch these 2 to 3 hour episodes of Monday Night Raw, but maybe an hour and a half of it I'm gonna be like really enjoying. The rest of it I'm gonna be like, eh.
It's funny. Yeah. It's pretty much similar to what happened with me. It was just,
Yeah, I mean, I bet that happened to a lot of people just in different time periods. I bet
yeah.
that I think most of the time that you're gonna be asking people that question, I think they're gonna be giving you the exact same answer. It's just gonna be at different times.
I'm curious. Yeah. I wonder if anyone has the different experience with it, where they're just into it. You're like, yeah, it's just part of it. I didn't mind it too much. I want to.
Yeah, I don't think I've met anybody yet. I mean, probably like the super hardcore people are probably gonna be like, yeah, I've never missed an episode, but
Yeah.
you know,
Of course, yeah. God, fuck. I can't believe those people are crazy if they have not missed an episode.
oh yeah, it's insane. Like, because even the years that I didn't watch, I didn't go back to watch them. I was just like, that's just history that I missed out on, so I'm just gonna pretend that it didn't happen.
Yeah,
Which is
I
which is
dabbled a
pretty
bit.
weird with yeah, pretty weird with wrestling. If you catch it at a good time, you can pick up on it and not miss a beat, you know. But it
Yeah,
just depends on the time that it just depends on the time you watch it. Like I always tell people, if you haven't watched wrestling but you're thinking about getting into it, I'd say wait till the day after Mania.
yeah,
Like you could watch Mania if you want to, just to like get an idea of what's gonna happen the next night. But if you want a really good refresh, reboot, start over, this is my first day of watching wrestling in a long time or ever. Start the Monday after WrestleMania.
just this year, Just don't do this year. Do next year. This year got confusing.
Just maybe. You just start, don't even start right now. Like
Yeah,
listen to our podcast. That's probably the best you can
yeah. Or just wait until AEW. Maybe they have something better.
do.
Because wild cards and superstar shakeups, I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
blood money everywhere, and old guys out of retirement.
it's crazy.
It's not entertaining right now.
Crazy. So yeah, so you said you watched wrestling for like about 11 to 13 years. How much
Yeah.
has wrestling impacted your life? Like, you think it taught you a lot of lessons watching it, or like has it how has it impacted you?
Uh,
Pretty much what I'm saying.
yeah. Um. I mean, I would say it has impacted me a lot as far as like opening up different doors of like things that I didn't think I was gonna be interested in, but turns out it's just like wrestling. Like I didn't think as a kid growing up that I was gonna be into comics or into video games or anything like that because I've said this on another podcast before too. Growing up, especially like here in Texas, it's a very jock, uh, very sports oriented kind of state. So it
Mm.
doesn't even matter the ethnicity that you are. Like if you're white or if you're a white kid and you had a lot of money because of your parents, you were still gonna play football no matter what. You were still gonna play baseball. You were still gonna play basketball. You were just gonna have better equipment than me, but you were still gonna play. If you were a black or a Mexican kid who was living in the barrio or living in an one bedroom apartment with like four or five different siblings, and everybody was sharing one bathroom, you were still gonna play football. You were still gonna play basketball. You were still gonna play baseball. It did not matter. It didn't matter where you came from. You were gonna play sports no matter what. So growing up as a kid, my dad was a very good football player. My brother was like a three sport borderline all American. He was really
Jeez.
good. So I had like that like little like kind of mini high school like legacy kind of like building up where like people knew who I was because my father, they knew who I was because of my brother. So like they were kind of like waiting for me to get up there too because they knew like, oh, okay, well this kid's gonna be a good athlete because he has like that little tree line. They do pay attention to that, especially in high schools in Texas. They'll know your last name because if you have a good tree line of athleticism, they're gonna know who you are. So
I never
I was
had that.
kind of like, yeah, it's something here. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily blame it on the town or on the state, but that's just how it is. That's just the culture. Uh, so as a kid, even if you're as a kid and then growing up to be like a teenager, you start to notice that because you have to live up to pressures that you didn't put on yourself. So while all that's going on, you're finding like little escape ways to get out of it. Like, okay, on my downtime, what am I going to be doing? What am I going to be doing to escape this? So watching wrestling was like, okay, this is pretty cool and it's fun to watch. It's creative, it's arts, it's a craft. and then turning around and like looking at like a Batman comic book or looking at a Captain America comic book, and I'm reading that, and I'm like, oh, holy crap, this is pretty cool too. It's got storyline, it's got art, it's got creativity, it's got really great storylines. You know, I'm going down the rabbit hole of Batman comics, and I'm like, holy crap, this is basically wrestling. It's just in a fucking comic book version. It's pretty fucking cool. And then, uh, of course, with video games, you had football like Madden, you had baseball, you had basketball on the systems, and then they also had wrestling games on there. So of course, I was buying all these, or I was asking my parents to buy me these systems because they're like my kind of scapegoat thing was just like, oh well, I'm buying it because all my friends in football and basketball like they want to play Madden, so I want to buy this so I can play Madden with my friends and play uh 2K with my friends or NBA Live or all my wrestling friends that are still into wrestling like we'll buy like the fucking like No Mercy or
Oh yeah, come on.
we'll buy what was the one on GameCube? Oh
Day
man,
of Reckoning.
Day of Reckoning.
Oh,
Like we were buying
mwah, that was
all
really good.
those. So when I was with my friends and all that, like I'd be playing that stuff just to have the systems. When I was by myself, I was playing like fucking Halo. I was playing uh like other than the sports games, I was playing like those kind of games. Uh because that was like my time to get away and it was time to myself. And then because doing that with wrestling got me into video games. And then doing that with wrestling because it was like a macho thing and I was already doing the macho things like in sports. It got me to like, okay, I'm tired of being a jock for 8 hours a day at school. Can I come home and like read a comic book and just be kind of like nerdy for a little bit? Or like can I watch the Pokemon anime when I'm like 16 years old because nobody's gonna judge me in my room watching Pokemon when I'm 16 years old? Can I do that for a little bit? You know, so in a way it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, people won't judge me too much if I'm 16 years old still watching wrestling, but they'll judge me if I wanted to watch Dragon Ball Z. And it's the same. That's why I'm still making that argument to this day. It's the same thing. It's just a different art and a different craft
Yeah.
and a different creativity. Uh, so I always just never understood that judgment mentality that people would have. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, if people don't mind me doing this, I'm still gonna be wanting to do this because it's showing me that it's the same thing. There's no shame to be. There's no shame to have, you know, because
Yeah.
it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same
So
thing.
yeah, so wrestling in general is just kind of like broadened my horizons on like all the stuff that I'm interested to and like basically make up who I am to this day.
That's good. That's a good way. I mean, that's impacted you. It's more. It's more than what it's impacted me. But we'll get to that some other time. How it impacted me. But we're getting close to that hour mark. You know, trying to ramp it down a bit, close it out. But let's close it out with a few questions I had in mind. You have any like? You have a favorite match you've ever seen in wrestling?
Live or
Just in general,
in
like
like
live or
okay.
like yeah.
So I'm gonna be a little biased because I did get to see this one live in person. San Antonio Royal Rumble, John Cena's 16th WWE Championship. John Cena versus AJ Styles.
Oh shit, you
That
were
was
there.
probably I was there. I lost my voice. I was rooting for AJ Styles, so I was heartbroken when he lost. But it was so great. It was so great because the match, of course, was a 5-star match. One of my top 5 matches of all time. Definitely, I would say it's one of my favorites because I'm just a little biased because I was there. But the thing that I took away from it that was so fucking awesome. This is why I love wrestling fans in general. Is the entire place the moment Cena came out and throughout the entire match booed the fuck out of him. So even me, I booed the fuck out of him. Everybody in that building was going for AJ Styles. About 20,000, 50,000 people in there. Yeah, no, it was Alamo Dome, so it was probably about 50,000
Jeez.
people in there. At the end of that match, as soon as everybody saw that John Cena won, and the ref gives him the title. He looks up at the crowd and like he's exhausted as hell. I look around and I'm already standing up, but I look at the crowd and everybody standing up, and all you hear is everybody giving him a standing ovation because everybody knew it's his 16th. He just tied Ric
Mm.
Flair. Everybody gave him a standing ovation. I was like, holy shit, this is. It gave me goosebumps. I was like, this shit is fucking insane. Like, we were just booing the fuck out of this guy like 30 minutes ago. Like, now we're giving him a standing ovation.
Is that the one that Ric Flair came out as well? I felt like he came out. It
I,
might have been the
I,
day after.
I don't. I don't think so. Yeah, it might have been the day after. If that place would have lost its mind if Rick was there. So I don't think we saw him there. But it was so cool to see that everybody knew. Everybody knew what that meant. Like the moment John won, we all knew what that meant. So the moment that happened, nobody booed, nobody was yelling. Everybody just stood up and just gave him a standing ovation.
That was a good match. Yeah, I remember that watching it. Yeah, I was kind of like hoping he wasn't gonna win, but I kind of was hoping he was gonna win too. Like I was like on both
Yeah,
sides
yeah, that was
because
the
I would
that
have been
was
cool if we got 16th and
yeah.
I was alive.
Yeah, because I was the same way. I was the same way because my cousin, I was already like literally not too far away from the Alamo Dome, but my cousin who wanted to come with me, he was about 4 hours away. So um, we were contemplating about making the trip, to watch it live. And I was telling him, I was like, well, I mean, you're gonna have the John Cena versus AJ match. He goes, who do you think's gonna win? I was like, I think AJ's still gonna retain, but it would be cool at the Rumble while we're there to watch John Cena tie Ric Flair. I was like, how cool is that to watch? He's
Yeah,
like, yeah, that might be the camel that broke the back. We might just actually have to go to this thing. I was like, all right.
that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. How about any favorite moments in wrestling history?
Oh God, favorite moments. You know what? I'm gonna say my favorite moment because I thought it was the most badass thing ever, but it was also like the not the turning point, but like gave everybody the visual eye of backstage of like, okay, this is how this thing is ran. Eventually, something's gonna change. Was the CM Punk pipe bomb?
Ooh, yeah.
That's probably my favorite moment. I loved it. I loved it because you knew right off the bat. Nobody wrote that. Nobody creatively produced that. Vince didn't green. I mean, he greenlit it, but he didn't know what he was gonna say. Uh, like you knew that was the most real, like levity thing that has happened to WWE in a long time. Uh, and it was a grievance. It was basically a burying of WWE for those like 3 or 4 minutes that he was up there, and because it just opened the eyes of every WWE wrestler or fan or I mean even wrestler at the time knew of all that. Didn't really say much. Didn't really talk
Yeah.
about it too much. But we all knew. We all knew exactly what was going on. So when you saw, like, no, nowadays we were waiting for somebody to drop pipe bombs on podcasts
I know.
because
Yeah.
he was the first. He was the first one to do it on the fucking show on live television. So that's probably my favorite moment because it opened that door of like, hey, if you're pissed off, say something. If you're mad about how this fucking machine is being ran, say something because this guy did it on live TV and did not get fired. So, what do you got to lose?
He didn't get fired, and he got the championship too afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, they even fucking put him over. How great is
Yeah.
that?
Fucking CM Punk. What a great wrestler. Hopefully he comes back. One last
Oh,
question.
hopefully. I doubt it, but hopefully.
Yeah. One last question before we just wrap it up. Who is your favorite wrestler of all time?
Shawn Michaels. And I'm not
Shawn.
being biased because he's from San Antonio. He's a Hall of Famer, man. A two-time Hall of Famer.
Well, like
Yeah, Shawn. Yeah, Shawn.
what made you like? How did he become your favorite wrestler? Was it like a certain match, or was it just overall like
Yeah,
the matches he's had? And
so I mean, wrestling wise, yes, he's had plenty of 5-star classic matches. He's had plenty of storylines that you wouldn't think were gonna be that great, but turned out to be one of the best things that he's ever done. Uh, but also, like as a kid, watching him, I was like, okay, this guy's everything I want to be. Like this guy's like flamboyant. He's fucking cocky. He's confident. He's got all these chicks around him. Like he's the fucking man there. Like like he was our modern day Ric Flair. That's who he was.
Yeah,
Uh, like if you didn't grow up in if you grew up in the '80s, you had Ric Flair. If you grew up in the '90s, you had
so
Shawn.
like, yeah.
Uh, so that's who I like inspired to be as a kid. But as I got older and as he got older, you're just like, oh wow, like not only does he have like that, personality, but he doesn't really have to rely on that anymore because he's starting to get older. So, you can't be a 40-year-old running around saying I'm a sexy boy. But you can come out to the theme song still and you can still put on 5-star wrestling matches. Not just like hardcore matches or gimmick matches. He put on 5-star wrestling matches. That Iron Man match he had with Kurt Angle
Oh
was
yeah.
in that WrestleMania he had with Kurt Angle, fucking phenomenal. So like one of the best in-ring performers of all time. Uh, there's never gonna be another Shawn. We have so many guys that remind me of Shawn, like Adam Cole, Dolph Ziggler. We have so many guys that remind me of him, but there's never gonna be another Shawn.
That one come
There's always
closer.
gonna be another. Yeah, there's always gonna be another version of a guy that we've had before. I don't think we're ever gonna get another Shawn Michaels.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, let's wrap it up. Thank you, Antman, for letting me do this first interview of the Botched Finish podcast. One of many, hopefully. We'll see.
No, trust me, Kevin. We're gonna knock people's socks off with this one. It's
We'll
gonna be
see.
amazing.
We'll see. I need to get better at this, but I think I liked it so far. But yeah. But thanks for doing this interview with me. I should just call it an interview, one on one, the one on one, one on one. I like that one.
One-on-one, false count anywhere, no disqualifications, whatever gimmick you could throw at it. It
Uh,
was it was a good match.
Before you go, you want to plug anything? You want to tell us where you're at and this and
Uh,
that?
yeah, I am on Twitter at AnthonyE35. The little name on top's Antman0208. I'm Antman0208 on Xbox. Antman underscore 0208 on PlayStation. And I also will be appearing on a episode of Growing Up Gaming with Mitch, who's a fellow kind of funny best friend. That episode will be up in sometime in June, but in the meantime, go look at Growing Up Gaming and their podcast, but also listen to us at the Botch Finish podcast.
Always listen to us, please. We need the subscribers.
For the love of God!
But that's it for this special edition of the Botched podcast that would be going up this week, whatever the week is. What is the week that's coming up on? The week of June 10th.
If you're listening to this in the future, just tweet at Kevin A. Sex and tell him what a phenomenal job he's done. It's the best.
Thank you.
It's
But
the greatest.
I'll try my best on this another one. But,
That way, when you come back from your vacation, you'll be like filled up with confidence and with joy.
oh, hopefully I
Maybe
will. Hopefully
they might just send you they might send you hate tweets. I don't know. I can't control it.
I mean, I'll take both, no matter what. I'll take any feedback. But
It'll just be Tagato and burner accounts just like tweeting at you the whole time.
Jesus, I hate take so much. But thank you again, man. We'll catch you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.